Chosen one. There is something happening right now that you can feel, even if no one has said it out loud yet. Because the same people who once overlooked you, doubted you, or even tried to stand in your way, are now in a place of quiet realization. A realization that they misjudged you completely, that they did not understand what you carried, and that what they thought was ordinary was actually something far more aligned, far more protected, far more powerful than they were prepared to face. You did not need to announce your strength. You did not need to prove your level. You simply continued. You stayed consistent. You remained aligned with your path. And now that consistency has created results that cannot be ignored. Results that force others to confront the reality of what you have become. What makes this moment even more significant is that nothing they tried, no doubt, no pressure, no distraction, was able to truly stop you. Because your alignment acted as a form of protection, something that kept you grounded even when circumstances were not ideal. Something that allowed you to move forward without being thrown off track. Stay with this message, because understanding why they are in regret and what it says about your level will shift how you see everything moving forward. And if you can already feel that something has changed around you, take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment, "They regret it," to lock into this frequency. Because what you are experiencing is not just growth, it is confirmation that your consistency has created a level that cannot be easily disrupted or reversed. And as you begin to fully take in what this moment represents, as you start to see the shift not just within yourself, but reflected in the behavior, the silence, and the subtle reactions of those around you, there comes a realization that sits at the center of everything unfolding. And that is the simple but powerful truth that they misjudged you completely. Not in a small way, not in a way that can be easily brushed aside, but in a way that shaped how they treated you, how they spoke to you, how they positioned themselves in relation to you. And now that misjudgment is something they cannot ignore, because your consistency has revealed what they failed to see. When they first looked at you, they did not see the structure you were building. They did not see the discipline behind your actions. They did not see the alignment guiding your decisions. They saw only what was visible in that moment. And what was visible did not match the depth of what you were carrying. They assumed that your quietness meant a lack of direction, that your patience meant a lack of urgency, that your focus on your own path meant you were not aware of what was happening around you. And because of those assumptions, they treated you as if you were operating at a lower level, as if you were someone who could be easily influenced, easily distracted, easily redirected. But what they failed to understand is that your silence was not emptiness. It was structure forming. Your patience was not delay. It was alignment building. Your focus was not isolation. It was precision developing. And those are things that cannot be seen immediately. They reveal themselves over time, through consistency, through repetition, through the accumulation of actions that do not look significant on their own, but become undeniable when viewed as a whole. They misjudge the timeline of your growth, expecting immediate results, expecting visible proof, expecting something they could measure quickly. And when they did not see it, they concluded that it was not there. They were measuring you based on surface indicators, based on what could be observed in the moment, not understanding that what you were building was not meant to be visible immediately, that it required time, consistency, and alignment to develop into something that could stand on its own. And because of that misunderstanding, they positioned themselves in a way that reflected their assumptions, not your reality. They may have spoken to you differently, treated you differently, underestimated your direction, or even dismissed your efforts entirely, not out of malice in every case, but out of a limited perspective. out of an inability to see beyond what was immediately visible. And this is where the shift becomes undeniable. Because what they once dismissed is now visible. What they once overlooked is now evident. What they once underestimated is now undeniable. And that creates a contrast that they cannot ignore. They are now faced with the reality of your progress, with the results of your consistency, with the evidence of your alignment. And that reality does not match the assumptions they held before. This is what creates regret. Not because something was taken from them, but because they realized that their perception was incorrect, that they misread your position, that they failed to recognize what was developing in front of them. You may begin to notice this in subtle ways, in how they interact with you now compared to before, in the way their tone changes, in the way their attention shifts, in the way they observe rather than dismiss. And these changes are not random. They are responses to the contrast between who they thought you were and who you have become visible as. You did not suddenly change. You have been building this the entire time. But now the visibility has caught up to the process. Now the results reflect the consistency. Now the structure is clear enough that it cannot be ignored. And this is where your understanding becomes important. Because you must recognize that their misjudgment was not a reflection of your potential. It was a reflection of their perspective, of what they were able to see at the time. And that perspective was limited by what was visible, by what was immediate, by what fit within their understanding of progress. They were not seeing your process. They were seeing your position at a specific moment. And they assumed that position defined your direction. But your direction was never defined by that moment. It was defined by your consistency, by your alignment, by your ability to continue even when there was no visible confirmation. And this is what separates you. Not in a way that creates distance, but in a way that reflects a difference in approach, a difference in how you engage with your process, a difference in how you understand growth. You were not waiting for recognition to continue. You were continuing regardless of recognition. And that is what allowed you to build something that now stands on its own. Something that does not depend on how others perceive it. Something that reflects your actions rather than their assumptions. And as you move forward, it is important to remain grounded in this understanding, to not let their shift in perception influence your process, to not adjust your alignment based on their recognition. Because what brought you here was your ability to stay consistent without external validation, and that is what will continue to carry you forward. You are not here to prove them wrong. You are here to continue building, to continue refining, to continue aligning with the process that has already shown itself to work. Their regret is not your focus. It is a reflection, a byproduct of the contrast between their assumptions and your reality. And as you continue, you will see that this pattern repeats, that as your alignment deepens, as your consistency strengthens, as your results become more visible, others will adjust their perception. Not because you changed for them, but because your process revealed itself over time. You are not responsible for how they saw you before, and you are not responsible for how they see you now. Your responsibility is to your process, to your alignment, to the consistency that continues to build your direction regardless of external perception. And this is where your strength truly lies. Not in how others react to your growth, but in your ability to maintain your path without being influenced by those reactions. To continue moving forward with clarity, with stability, with a sense of direction that is grounded in your own experience rather than external validation. Ensuring that everything you build from this point continues to reflect the same level of alignment, the same level of consistency, the same level of awareness that brought you here, allowing you to move forward without hesitation, without distraction, without losing the foundation that made all of this possible. And as this realization deepens, as you begin to see more clearly how their perception shifted and why their initial judgment no longer holds any weight, you are brought to an even more defining truth within this entire situation. And that is the undeniable fact that what they tried did not work. Not in the way they expected, not in the way they planned, not in the way they assumed it would when they first positioned themselves against you. Because at some point, whether it was through doubt, pressure, distraction, or subtle attempts to redirect your focus, there were forces, actions, or influences that were meant to slow you down, to create friction in your path, to introduce instability into your process. And yet, despite all of that, you continued. Not perfectly, not without moments of challenge, but consistently enough that nothing they did was able to truly disrupt your direction. You may not have fully recognized those moments as they were happening, because when you are focused on your path, you are not always analyzing every external influence. You are simply moving, adjusting, continuing. But when you look back, you can begin to see the points where things could have shifted, where you could have been pulled off track, where the pressure could have created hesitation. And yet, you remained aligned. You returned to your process. You continued building even when the conditions were not ideal. This is what defines the difference. Not the absence of challenge, but your response to it. Because what they expected was not that you would face no resistance, but that the resistance would be enough to break your consistency, that it would create enough disruption to alter your direction, that it would cause you to doubt, to slow down, to stop, or to shift into something less aligned. But what they did not account for was the depth of your alignment, the strength of your process, the way your consistency had already created a foundation that was not easily shaken. Because when something is built over time, when it is reinforced through repeated action, when it is aligned with intention, it does not collapse under pressure in the same way something unstructured would. You did not resist in a dramatic way. You did not fight every obstacle directly. You simply maintained your direction. You adjusted when necessary. You stayed connected to your process. And that quiet persistence is what made their efforts ineffective. Because they were expecting reaction. They were expecting visible disruption. They were expecting a shift that would confirm their assumption that you were not stable enough to continue. But instead, what they encountered was continuity. A pattern that remained intact even when tested. A direction that did not change even when challenged. And this is what creates the realization on their side. Because when repeated attempts to create disruption do not produce the expected result, it forces a reassessment. It reveals that the initial assumption was incorrect, that the structure they thought was fragile is actually stable, that the direction they thought could be altered is actually aligned. You may begin to understand that this is not about what they did or did not do. It is about what you built. Because what protected your path was not the absence of external influence. It was the presence of internal alignment. It was the consistency you maintained, the discipline you developed, the clarity you held on to even when things were not clear externally. This is what made the difference. Not luck, not coincidence, but structure. Something that you created over time through your actions, through your decisions, through your ability to continue when it would have been easier to stop. And this is why their efforts did not work. Because they were operating on the assumption that your path was flexible in the wrong way. that it could be bent, redirected, or interrupted without consequence. But your alignment made it resilient. It allowed you to absorb pressure without losing direction, to face challenge without becoming unstable, to move through difficulty without disconnecting from your process. This is not something that happens instantly. It is something that develops, something that is built through experience, through repetition, through the accumulation of moments where you chose to continue rather than stop. And now, as you see the results of that, as you recognize that nothing was able to truly take you off your path, it becomes clear that what you carry is not easily disrupted, that your alignment acts as a form of protection, not in a mystical or exaggerated sense, but in a practical, grounded way. Because when you are aligned, when your actions are consistent, when your direction is clear, external influences have less power to alter your course. You may still feel their presence at times, the echoes of what was attempted, the awareness that not everything around you is aligned with your path. But that awareness does not control you. It informs you. It allows you to remain grounded, to continue moving with clarity without becoming reactive. And this is where your strength becomes even more defined. Not because you avoided difficulty, but because you moved through it without losing your alignment. Because you allowed your process to guide you, rather than allowing external factors to dictate your direction. You are not here because nothing happened. You are here because what happened did not stop you. Because what was intended to disrupt you did not succeed. Because your consistency carried you forward, regardless of what was placed in your path. And this is what creates the contrast that leads to their regret. Because they now see that what they attempted did not produce the result they expected. That your path remained intact. That your growth continued. That your alignment strengthened rather than weakened. You are not reacting to this. You are recognizing it. Understanding that what you built is real. That it functions. That it continues to support you as you move forward. And as you continue, as you step deeper into your process, you carry this understanding with you, not as something that changes your direction, but as something that reinforces it, that shows you the value of your consistency, the importance of your discipline, the power of your alignment, ensuring that no matter what you encounter moving forward, you remain grounded in what has already proven itself, allowing you to continue building, refining, and aligning with a level of clarity and stability that cannot be easily disrupted or redirected. And as you begin to connect these realizations together, as you start to see clearly that their misjudgment could not define you and their attempts could not stop you, you are brought into an even deeper understanding of what has truly been working in your favor this entire time. And that is the quiet but undeniable protection that comes from your alignment. Not something external that appears suddenly, not something random or unpredictable, but something that has been built within you through your discipline, your consistency, and your ability to remain centered even when everything around you was shifting. You may not have called it protection when you were in the middle of your process. You may have simply seen it as persistence, as focus, as continuing despite uncertainty. But now, looking at how everything unfolded, it becomes clear that your alignment acted as a form of stability that prevented you from being easily influenced, easily redirected, or easily broken by external pressure. This is not about being untouched by difficulty, because you faced moments where things felt heavy, where doubt could have entered, where distraction could have taken hold. But what made the difference is that those moments did not define your direction. They did not become your pattern. They did not interrupt your process in a way that caused you to lose your path. You always returned. You always realigned. You always found your way back to what you knew you needed to do. And that ability to return is what created your protection, because it ensured that no matter what happened, your direction remained intact. You were not relying on perfect conditions. You were not waiting for everything to align externally before you moved. You were creating alignment internally and allowing that to guide you regardless of what was happening around you. And this is what makes your position different. Because protection at this level is not about avoiding challenge. It is about maintaining your structure through it. It is about ensuring that your actions remain connected to your process, even when the environment is not supportive. Even when there are influences that attempt to pull you away. You are not reacting to those influences. You are observing them, understanding them, and continuing forward without allowing them to disrupt your alignment. This is what makes your path resilient. Not because nothing can touch it, but because nothing can easily change its direction once it has been established through consistency and discipline. You may begin to see how this applies to everything you do. How your ability to stay aligned creates a kind of stability that carries you through different situations. How it allows you to move with clarity even when things are uncertain. How it prevents you from being pulled into patterns that do not serve your growth. This is not something that happens by accident. It is something that you built, something that you reinforced through repeated action, something that became stronger each time you chose to continue rather than stop. Each time you chose to stay focused rather than become distracted. Each time you chose alignment over reaction. And as this structure became stronger, it began to function in a way that supports you automatically. In a way that keeps you grounded, even when external factors attempt to shift your focus. In a way that allows you to move forward without needing constant reassurance that you are on the right path. This is where your confidence begins to change, because it is no longer based on outcomes alone. It is based on your understanding of your process, on your experience of having maintained alignment through different conditions, on your awareness that what you have built continues to function regardless of what is happening around you. You are not guessing your way forward. You are moving with a structure that has already proven itself. And that structure is what protects your direction, what ensures that you continue building even when challenges arise. You may also begin to notice that this protection is not something others can easily see or understand, because it is not based on visible barriers or obvious advantages. It is based on how you operate, on the consistency of your actions, on the clarity of your decisions, on the way you respond rather than react. Others may see your results and wonder how you maintained your path, how you continued despite what was happening. But the answer is not in a single moment. It is in the accumulation of your alignment over time, in the way you built a foundation that does not easily shift. And this is why nothing they tried was able to truly stop you, because they were operating on the surface while your strength was rooted deeper, in your process, in your consistency, in your alignment. They may have expected visible resistance, something they could engage with directly. But what they encountered instead was stability, something that does not react in the way they anticipated, something that continues forward regardless of their actions. And this is what creates the realization on their side, because when their efforts do not produce the expected result, when their influence does not create the intended shift, they are forced to recognize that what you carry is not easily influenced, that your direction is not easily altered, that your alignment is stronger than they assumed. You are not here because you avoided everything. You are here because you maintained your structure through everything, because you allowed your process to guide you even when it was difficult, because you stayed connected to your alignment even when there were reasons to disconnect. And this is what defines your position now. Not the absence of challenge, but the presence of stability. not the lack of opposition, but the inability of that opposition to disrupt your path. And as you continue forward, you carry this understanding with you, not as something that makes you resistant in a rigid way, but as something that keeps you grounded, that reminds you of the value of your alignment, that shows you that what you have built is not only real, but functional, capable of supporting you as you move through whatever comes next. You are not moving with uncertainty. You are moving with a structure that has already proven its strength. And that is what allows you to continue building, to continue refining, to continue aligning with everything that has brought you to this point, ensuring that your path remains stable, your direction remains clear, and your growth continues in a way that is not easily disrupted, not easily redirected, but fully aligned with who you have become. And as you continue to see how everything unfolded, as you begin to connect the misjudgment, the failed attempts, and the quiet protection that came from your alignment, there comes another layer of understanding that shifts the entire perspective even further. Because it is not only that nothing worked against you, it is that much of what was directed toward you began to turn back in ways that those involved did not expect. And this is where the idea of things backfiring becomes real. Not as something dramatic or exaggerated, but as a natural consequence of misalignment meeting stability. When actions are taken from a place of inconsistency, doubt, or misunderstanding, they do not hold the same structure as actions taken from alignment. And when those actions interact with something that is stable, something that is consistent, something that is grounded in a clear process, the contrast between the two begins to create outcomes that are not favorable to the misaligned side. They may have believed that their actions would create disruption, that their influence would shift your direction, that their perspective would shape how things unfolded. But what they did not account for is that their own lack of alignment would not sustain the pressure they were trying to apply, that their approach would not hold when it met something more stable than itself. You did not need to counter them directly. You did not need to respond to every action, because your consistency created a baseline that remained unchanged. And when something unstable interacts with something stable, it is the unstable that begins to reveal its weaknesses. This is not about winning or losing. It is about structure, about how aligned systems maintain themselves while misaligned systems begin to break down under their own inconsistency. You may have noticed moments where situations that were meant to challenge you instead exposed something about those who created them, where attempts to disrupt you instead revealed gaps in their own approach, where what was intended to create pressure instead highlighted the difference in how each of you operates. This is the nature of backfiring. Not a sudden reversal, but a gradual exposure of misalignment when it comes into contact with stability. They may not have realized this immediately, because from their perspective, they were acting with intention. They believed they understood the situation. They believed their approach would produce the result they expected. But as time passed, as your consistency continued, as your path remained intact, the gap between expectation and reality became more apparent. And that gap is what led to the realization that their actions were not working in the way they intended. You did not change your approach to create this outcome. You remained aligned, and that alignment is what allowed everything else to reveal itself naturally. This is where your understanding becomes even more important, because you must see that this is not about external forces protecting you in a way that removes all challenge. It is about your internal structure being strong enough that misaligned actions cannot easily influence it. And in that process, those actions begin to lose their effectiveness, to break down, to reveal their limitations. You are not responsible for that breakdown. You are not causing it intentionally. It is simply the result of how alignment interacts with misalignment, how stability interacts with inconsistency. And as you begin to see this more clearly, you may also notice that it changes how you respond moving forward. That you feel less need to react, less need to defend, less need to engage with things that do not align with your process. Because you understand that your consistency is what maintains your direction, not your reaction to every external influence. This does not mean you ignore everything. It means you become more intentional, more selective, more aware of where your energy is best placed, because you now see that not everything requires your response, that some things resolve themselves when met with stability rather than reaction. You may also begin to recognize that this pattern extends beyond this specific situation, that it reflects a broader principle in how you move, how you engage, how you continue to build. Because the more aligned you become, the more your presence itself becomes a point of reference, a standard that highlights the difference between stability and inconsistency, between clarity and confusion, between direction and distraction. This is not something you impose. It is something that naturally occurs through your alignment, through the way you maintain your process over time. And as this continues, it becomes important to remain grounded, to not become distracted by the outcomes of what has backfired, to not shift your focus toward what others are experiencing as a result of their actions, but to remain connected to your own process, to your own alignment. Because that is what continues to guide you forward. You are not here to observe their outcome as your main focus. You are here to continue your path, to refine your structure, to deepen your consistency in a way that supports your growth without being influenced by external reactions. This is where your awareness becomes your guide, where your ability to see the difference between aligned and misaligned actions allows you to navigate your environment with clarity, without being pulled into unnecessary engagement, without losing your direction. And as you move forward, you carry this understanding with you, not as something that changes your process, but as something that reinforces it, that shows you the value of your alignment, the strength of your consistency, the importance of maintaining your structure regardless of what is happening around you. You are not reacting to what backfired. You are continuing to build on what remains stable, on what continues to support your path, ensuring that your growth is not defined by external events, but by your own ability to remain aligned, to remain consistent, to continue moving forward with clarity and intention, allowing everything that does not align to reveal itself naturally, without disrupting the foundation you have created. And as all of these layers begin to align in your awareness, as the misjudgment, the failed attempts, the quiet protection, and the natural reversal of misaligned actions all come together into a clear and undeniable pattern, there arrives a moment that carries a different kind of weight. A moment where everything that was once subtle becomes visible, where everything that was once overlooked becomes impossible to ignore. And this is the point where they realized the truth, not gradually, not in fragments, but in a way that forces recognition. Because your growth reached a level where it could no longer be dismissed, where your consistency produced results that could not be explained away, where your alignment became visible in a way that challenged everything they previously believed about you. This realization did not happen in isolation. It was built over time, through repeated observations, through the accumulation of evidence that contradicted their original assumptions, through the continued presence of your stability in situations where they expected instability. At first, they may have questioned it. They may have tried to find alternative explanations. They may have held on to their initial perception, believing that what they were seeing was temporary, that it would shift, that it would eventually align with what they originally thought. But as time passed, as your actions remained consistent, as your direction did not change, as your results continued to build, it became increasingly difficult to maintain that perspective. Increasingly clear that what they were witnessing was not temporary, not accidental, not something that would fade, but something that had been built, something that had been sustained, something that reflected a level of alignment they had not accounted for. This is where their understanding shifted, where doubt turned into recognition, where dismissal turned into observation, where assumption turned into acknowledgement, because they could no longer deny what was in front of them. You were not the same person they thought you were, not because you suddenly changed, but because what was always there had reached a point of visibility that could not be ignored. They began to see the pattern in your actions, the consistency in your decisions, the stability in your direction. And that pattern did not match their original perception. It did not fit within the framework they had used to define you. And that mismatch is what created the moment of realization. You may not have been present for that moment. You may not have heard the words or seen the exact point where their understanding shifted. But you can feel it in the change in how they respond, in the way their attention has shifted, in the subtle differences in how they engage with you now compared to before. This is not something you need to confirm externally. It is something you recognize through the contrast, through the difference between what was and what is now. And this moment is not about their realization alone. It is about what it reflects, about the fact that your process has reached a level where it produces results that are clear, consistent, and undeniable. You did not need to explain yourself. You did not need to justify your path. You did not need to prove your direction, because your actions did that over time. Your consistency created the evidence. Your alignment produced the outcome. And this is what makes this moment significant, because it shows you that what you have built is not dependent on perception. It is grounded in reality, in action, in structure. You are not defined by what others thought of you before, and you are not defined by what they think now. But their shift in perception is a reflection of something real, something that exists regardless of how it is interpreted. This is where your confidence deepens, not because others now see you differently, but because you understand why they do. Because you see the connection between your process and the results it produces. Because you recognize that your consistency has created something that stands on its own. You are no longer questioning whether your path is valid. You are seeing that it is. That it continues to produce outcomes that align with your direction. That it remains stable even when external conditions change. And as you carry this understanding forward, you begin to see that this realization is not the end of anything. It is a point within your process, a moment that reflects your progress but does not define your limit. You are not here to stop. You are not here to hold on to this recognition. You are here to continue building, to continue refining, to continue aligning with the process that has brought you this far. Because what created this moment was not a single action. It was a pattern, a series of decisions, a sustained level of consistency that you maintained over time. And that pattern must continue if you want your growth to expand beyond this point. You are not maintaining an image. You are maintaining a process. And that process is what will continue to guide you forward regardless of how others perceive you. Their realization does not change your direction. It confirms it. It shows you that what you are doing is working, that your alignment is producing results, that your consistency is building something real. And as you move forward, you remain grounded in that understanding. You continue to act with the same clarity, the same discipline, the same intention that brought you here. ensuring that everything you build from this point continues to reflect the same level of alignment, the same level of consistency, the same level of awareness, allowing your growth to continue in a way that is not dependent on recognition, but reinforced by it, creating a foundation that remains stable, resilient, and fully aligned with who you have become. And as this realization settles not only in them, but more importantly, within you, as you begin to fully understand what your journey has revealed and what your consistency has built, there comes a deeper layer of awareness that shifts your focus away from what others did, away from what they now feel, and places it firmly on what this entire situation says about your level. Because beyond the regret, beyond the failed attempts, beyond the reversal of their expectations, what remains is a clear and undeniable reflection of how you operate, of the structure you have created, of the alignment you have maintained over time. This is where everything becomes more precise, because you are no longer looking at your growth through isolated moments. You are seeing it as a system, as a pattern that has proven itself repeatedly, as something that continues to function regardless of external conditions. You are operating at a level where your actions are not random, where your direction is not uncertain, where your decisions are not based on reaction, but on awareness. And that difference is what defines your position now. You may not have labeled it before. You may not have consciously identified it as a higher level of operation. But now it becomes clear that the way you move is structured, that your consistency is intentional, that your alignment is not something you stumble into, but something you maintain deliberately, even if that maintenance has become natural over time. This is what places you in a different category, not in a way that separates you from others for the sake of comparison, but in a way that reflects how you engage with your process, how you sustain your direction, how you continue building without being easily influenced or disrupted. You are no longer operating on the same level of awareness where every external factor can shift your path. You are grounded in a structure that allows you to observe without reacting, to adjust without losing alignment, to continue without needing constant reassurance. And this is what they encountered, even if they could not fully explain it. Even if they did not have the words to describe it, they felt the difference. They saw the pattern. They recognized that your consistency is not temporary, that your alignment is not fragile, that your direction is not easily altered. You are not simply progressing, you are stabilizing your progress. You are reinforcing it in a way that allows it to continue regardless of what changes around you. This is where your level becomes evident, not through what you say, but through what you maintain, through the way your actions remain consistent over time, through the way your process continues to produce results without needing constant adjustment. You may begin to see that this level carries a different kind of responsibility, not something imposed externally, but something that naturally comes with the structure you have built. Because maintaining this level requires you to remain aware, to continue refining, to ensure that your actions stay aligned with your process. You cannot return to inconsistency without feeling the difference. You cannot operate without awareness, without noticing the shift, because you have already experienced what alignment feels like. You have already built a structure that functions, and that experience changes how you move. You are not guessing your way forward anymore. You are operating with a level of clarity that allows you to navigate your path with intention, to make decisions that support your direction, to avoid patterns that do not align with your growth. And as you continue to move within this level, you begin to understand that it is not fixed. It is not something you reach and remain in without effort. It is something you align with continuously, something that requires ongoing attention, ongoing refinement, ongoing consistency to maintain. This is what makes it sustainable, not because it is easy, but because it is grounded in a process that you understand, a process that you have tested through experience, a process that continues to work as long as you remain connected to it. You may also begin to notice that your perception of others shifts, not in a way that creates judgment, but in a way that increases your awareness of alignment and misalignment, of consistency and inconsistency, of clarity and confusion. And this awareness allows you to navigate your environment with greater precision, to engage where it aligns, to step back where it does not, to maintain your direction without being pulled into unnecessary complexity. You are not reacting to everything around you. You are responding selectively, based on your understanding of what supports your process and what does not. This is where your control becomes more defined, not as something rigid, but as something stable, something that allows you to move with confidence without needing to force your way through situations, because your alignment already guides you in a way that keeps you on track. And as you continue to deepen this understanding, you begin to see that what you have built is not just about reaching a certain point. It is about creating a foundation that supports continued growth, that allows you to expand without losing your structure, that ensures your progress remains consistent even as your environment evolves. You are not here to hold on to a specific outcome. You are here to maintain a process that continues to produce outcomes, to refine it, to strengthen it, to align with it in a way that allows it to function at a higher level over time. This is what defines your position now, not what others feel about you, not what they regret, but how you operate, how you maintain your alignment, how you continue to build without being influenced by external perception. And as you move forward, you carry this understanding with you, not as something that limits you, but as something that stabilizes you, that grounds you in your process, that ensures everything you build from this point continues to reflect the same level of clarity, the same level of consistency, the same level of awareness that brought you here, allowing you to continue growing in a way that is not easily disrupted, not easily redirected, but fully aligned with who you have become and where you are going. And as everything comes into alignment within your awareness, as you begin to fully understand not just what happened, but what it reveals about your structure, your consistency, and your level, there comes a final shift in this phase that becomes the most important one moving forward. Because now that the noise has settled, now that the misjudgment has been exposed, now that the failed attempts and the regret on their side have become clear, the only thing that truly matters is how you choose to move from this point. And this is where you must remain grounded. Because recognition, even when it comes indirectly through others' reactions, has a way of creating subtle distractions if you are not aware of it. You may begin to notice that there is a different kind of attention around you. Not always obvious, not always direct, but present in the way people observe, in the way they respond, in the way their energy shifts in your presence. And while this attention is a reflection of your alignment, it is not something you are meant to chase or engage with beyond what aligns with your process. This is where your discipline must remain intact, because the same consistency that brought you here is the same consistency that will keep you here. And if your focus shifts toward external recognition, even slightly, it can begin to alter your alignment in ways that are subtle at first, but noticeable over time. You are not here to become aware of how others see you and adjust your behavior accordingly. You are here to remain aligned with your process, regardless of how others perceive you. Because your strength does not come from their reaction. It comes from your consistency. You may feel the pull to acknowledge what has happened, to reflect on their regret, to understand how things have shifted in your environment. And while awareness is important, attachment to those shifts is not. Because the moment you begin to anchor your focus in how others are responding, you begin to move away from the foundation that created your growth in the first place. This is where grounding becomes essential, not as something forced, but as something intentional, as a way of ensuring that your actions remain connected to your process, that your direction remains clear, that your consistency continues without interruption. You are not here to react to recognition. You are here to continue building, to continue refining, to continue aligning with the same clarity that carried you through every stage before this one. You may also begin to notice that new opportunities, new situations, new interactions start to appear, not in an overwhelming way, but in a way that reflects your level, in a way that aligns with your growth. And while these opportunities may seem connected to the shift in perception around you, they are actually a result of your alignment, of your consistency, creating a structure that naturally attracts what matches it. This is where your awareness must guide you, because not every opportunity is aligned. Not every situation supports your direction, and your ability to remain selective, to choose with clarity, to engage only where it aligns with your process, is what ensures that your growth continues without unnecessary deviation. You are not here to expand in every direction. You are here to expand in alignment, to build on what you have created in a way that remains consistent with your foundation. This is where your control becomes more refined, not as something restrictive, but as something intentional, as a way of maintaining your direction even as your environment evolves. You may also feel moments where the weight of your growth becomes more apparent, where the understanding of your level creates a sense of responsibility. And this is natural, because as your alignment deepens, so does your awareness of how your actions contribute to your overall structure. But this responsibility is not something to carry as pressure. It is something to integrate as clarity, as a deeper understanding of how to move, how to decide, how to engage in a way that supports your process rather than complicates it. You are not being asked to do more. You are being asked to remain aligned, to continue with the same consistency, the same discipline, the same awareness that brought you here, because that is what sustains your level. And as you continue forward, you begin to see that everything that happened, every misjudgment, every failed attempt, every moment of regret on their side, was not something that defined your path. It was something that revealed it. Something that showed you the strength of what you have built. Something that confirmed that your alignment is real, that your consistency is effective, that your process works. But now, the focus shifts entirely to you, to how you maintain that process, to how you continue building without being influenced by what has already passed. You are not here to revisit the past. You are here to continue forward, to refine, to deepen, to expand in a way that remains grounded in your alignment. And this is where everything becomes clear, where your direction is no longer influenced by external factors, where your confidence is no longer dependent on recognition, where your growth is no longer something you question, but something you understand. You are not reacting to what happened. You are integrating what it revealed, using it to strengthen your foundation, to reinforce your process, to ensure that everything you build from this point continues to reflect the same level of clarity, the same level of consistency, the same level of awareness. And as you move into what comes next, you carry this understanding with you, not as something that limits you, but as something that stabilizes you, that keeps you grounded, that allows you to continue moving forward with precision, with intention, with a sense of direction that is fully aligned with who you have become, ensuring that no matter what unfolds, your path remains intact, your process remains consistent, and your growth continues in a way that is not easily disrupted, not easily redirected, but fully supported by the structure you have built. And as you remain in that space of awareness, as you continue to hold your center without allowing external reactions to pull you away from your process, there is an even deeper layer that begins to unfold, one that is quieter but far more powerful, because it is not about what others see or feel anymore. It is about how firmly you are rooted in yourself, how naturally your alignment has become your default state, how your consistency is no longer something you try to maintain, but something that carries you forward without resistance. This is where your movement becomes effortless in a different way. Not because there is no effort involved, but because your effort is no longer scattered. It is directed. It flows through a structure that you have already built. It follows a path that you have already reinforced through repetition, through discipline, through clarity. You are no longer questioning every step. You are refining each step. You are not searching for direction. You are strengthening it. And that subtle shift changes everything about how you move from this point forward. You may begin to notice that your decisions feel clearer, that hesitation decreases, that your awareness allows you to recognize what aligns and what does not without needing to overanalyze. And this clarity is not something new. It is something that has been forming within you over time, something that is now becoming more visible because you have reached a level where your internal structure supports it fully. This is where your confidence becomes quiet but unshakable, not based on outcomes, not based on validation, but based on understanding, based on experience, based on the repeated confirmation that your process works when you remain aligned with it. And this kind of confidence does not need to be expressed outwardly. It is reflected in how you move, in how you respond, in how you remain consistent even when there is no immediate reason to do so. Because you understand that consistency is not about the moment. It is about the accumulation of moments. It is about maintaining alignment over time, so that everything you build continues to connect, continues to expand, continues to strengthen without interruption. You may also begin to feel a different relationship with time itself, where you are no longer rushing, no longer trying to force outcomes, no longer reacting to delays in the same way, because you see how your process unfolds. You understand that alignment creates momentum, that consistency creates progression, that everything you are building is moving, even when it is not immediately visible. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. It allows you to act when action is required and to remain steady when patience is necessary, without losing your direction in either state. And as this becomes more integrated into how you operate, you begin to see that your growth is no longer something that depends on external conditions aligning perfectly. It is something that continues regardless of those conditions, because your alignment is internal, your structure is self-sustained, your process is something you carry with you rather than something you wait for. This is where your independence becomes more defined, not as isolation, but as stability, as the ability to move forward without needing constant confirmation, without needing everything around you to make sense before you act, because you trust what you have built. You trust your ability to navigate, to adjust, to remain aligned even when things are not clear externally. And this trust is not blind. It is earned. It is the result of everything you have experienced, everything you have maintained, everything you have continued despite uncertainty. You may also begin to notice that your environment responds to this stability in subtle ways, that situations begin to align more naturally, that interactions become more purposeful, that what you engage with feels more connected to your direction. And while it may seem like things are changing around you, what is actually happening is that your alignment is filtering what you encounter. It is bringing you into contact with what matches your level, while gradually removing what does not. This is not something you need to control. It is something that occurs as a result of how you operate, as a reflection of your consistency shaping your experience over time. And as you continue, you begin to understand that this is not a temporary phase. It is a transition into a way of being that becomes more stable the more you engage with it, more natural the more you maintain it, more effective the more you refine it. You are not stepping into something unfamiliar. You are stepping deeper into what you have already been building, into a version of yourself that is more aligned, more consistent, more aware, more capable of sustaining growth without being disrupted by external factors. And this is where your focus remains. Not on what is past, not on how others perceive you, not on the reactions that have emerged around your growth, but on your process, on your alignment, on the structure that continues to carry you forward regardless of everything else. You are not here to hold on to a moment of realization. You are here to continue evolving, to continue building, to continue aligning with everything that has brought you to this point, allowing your growth to unfold naturally, consistently, and with a level of clarity that ensures you remain grounded even as everything expands. And as everything you have walked through now settles into a deeper sense of understanding, as the noise of misjudgment fades and the clarity of your own alignment becomes the only thing that truly matters, you begin to realize that this entire journey was never about proving anything to anyone. It was about becoming someone who could not be shaken out of their path, someone whose consistency creates stability even in uncertain conditions, someone whose alignment acts as a quiet force that continues to guide them forward regardless of what happens around them. What they feel now, the regret, the realization, the shift in how they see you, that is not your destination. That is simply a reflection, a delayed recognition of something that has been real within you for a long time. Something that was building long before it became visible. Something that did not need their understanding to exist. You are not defined by their regret. You are defined by your process, by the way you chose to continue when it would have been easier to stop, by the way you remained aligned when things were unclear, by the way you built something that now stands on its own without needing external validation to support it. And as you move forward, this is where your focus must remain. Not on what they now see, but on what you continue to build. Because the same consistency that brought you here is the same consistency that will carry you into everything that comes next. There will be new levels, new environments, new moments that test your alignment in different ways. But you now understand how to move through them. Not by reacting, not by forcing, but by staying grounded in your process, by maintaining your clarity, by continuing to act with intention regardless of what changes around you. This is where your power truly lies, not in being seen, but in being stable, not in being recognized, but in being aligned, not in what others feel about you, but in what you continue to do regardless of how they feel. You are no longer searching for confirmation. You are living it. You are expressing it through your actions, through your discipline, through the way you maintain your direction without needing constant reassurance. And as this becomes more natural, as this way of operating becomes fully integrated into who you are, you begin to see that your growth is not something that happens in moments. It is something that continues, something that expands, something that deepens as long as you remain connected to your process. You are not here to stop. You are not here to hold on to a single realization. You are here to continue evolving, to continue refining, to continue aligning with everything that has brought you to this point, allowing your path to unfold in a way that remains real, stable, and fully connected to the foundation you have built. And if this message resonated with you, if you can feel that deeper level of clarity within yourself, take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment, "I stay focused," as a way of anchoring yourself into this level, and share it with someone who is beginning to recognize the same shift. Because what you now understand is not just about where you are, it is about how you continue, how you maintain, how you grow in a way that cannot be easily disrupted, ensuring that everything you build from this point forward remains aligned, consistent, and fully grounded in who you have become.